My name is Ryan and I'm 35 years old. I work as a plumber in Phoenix, Arizona. I was married to Lindsay for 11 years and thought we had the perfect family with our two children, 8-year-old Ethan and 6-year-old Chloe. Everything started with what seemed like a simple coincidence. On a Friday evening, I came home earlier than usual. My last call got canceled. As I parked near our house, I noticed an unfamiliar silver Audi in our driveway. I figured maybe one of Lindsay's friends had stopped by. I entered through the back door as I always did after work, to avoid tracking dirt through the house. The kids were playing in the living room, the TV was on full volume. I went upstairs to change clothes and heard strange sounds coming from our bedroom. My heart started beating faster. I approached the door and heard Lindsay's voice, but not the way I was used to hearing it. She was speaking softly, tenderly, laughing in a special way. Then I heard a man's voice, familiar, but I couldn't figure out whose it was. I didn't knock or open the door. I went back downstairs, got in my car and drove to the nearest bar. I needed time to collect my thoughts. The next day I acted as if nothing had happened. Lindsay was the same as always, making breakfast, getting the kids ready for school, kissing me goodbye. But something in her eyes was different. Or maybe it was just my imagination. For a week I was tormented by guesses. Who was it? How long had this been going on? What? I was a good husband, I didn't drink, didn't gamble, brought money home, loved the children. What was I doing wrong? On Saturday morning I decided to act. I told Lindsay I was going to visit my brother on the other side of town and would be back in the evening. Actually, I parked around the corner and waited. Around 11 o'clock, that same silver Audi pulled up to our house. Marcus got out of the car, my best friend for the past 15 years. The person I trusted more than my own brother. Marcus, who was Ethan's godfather. Who helped me renovate the house 3 years ago. Who was always there when I needed support. I felt like the world was spinning around me. This wasn't just my wife's betrayal, it was a double betrayal, a stab in the back from my closest people. I couldn't go home that day. I drove around the city aimlessly, stopped by the lake where Marcus and I used to fish as kids. I remembered how he introduced me to Lindsay at a college party. How he was the best man at our wedding. How he celebrated the birth of our children. In the evening I finally came home. Lindsay asked how my brother was, how things were going. I answered monosyllabically. She noticed my tension but attributed it to fatigue. For the next 2 months I lived in some kind of nightmare. Every day I saw both of them but I couldn't say anything. Marcus visited just because, more often than ever, brought gifts for the children, invited the family for weekend barbecues. And Lindsay was almost the perfect wife, attentive, caring, taking care of the house. The only thing that gave her away was her phone. She used to always leave it anywhere but now she constantly kept it with her. And when it rang she would go to another room or outside. One evening when the children had gone to bed, I was sitting in the garage repairing an old lawnmower. I needed something to do to keep from going crazy. Lindsay came in and said she was going to her friend Melissa's. She was having problems with her husband and needed support. An hour later I called Melissa. She said in surprise that Lindsay wasn't there and hadn't planned to come. That's when I realized it was time to act. But I didn't want scandals, screaming, tears. The children shouldn't suffer more than necessary. The next morning I went to a lawyer. I told him the situation and asked him to prepare divorce papers. I wanted to do everything civilly. But fate had other plans. That same evening when I returned from work, Marcus was sitting at our kitchen table drinking coffee. The children were doing homework nearby. "Hey buddy," he said with his usual smile. "How's it going?" I looked at him and couldn't believe such audacity. How can you sit so naturally in the house of someone you're betraying? "Everything's fine," I replied. "How about you?" "Well, you know, there's one problem," Marcus began, looking at Lindsay. "My landlord is selling the apartment. I need to find new housing urgently. Do you know anything suitable?" Lindsay quickly intervened. "Maybe he could move in with us for now? We have a free room in the basement." I felt blood rushing to my head. They wanted their affair to continue under my roof? This was too much. "Sounds like a good idea," I said calmly. "But first I need to talk to you, Marcus." Outside. We went to the backyard. The children stayed with Lindsay. "I know everything," I said without preamble. Marcus turned pale but quickly collected himself. "What are you talking about?" "About you and my wife. About what's been going on for months." The pause dragged on. Marcus was staring at the ground. "Ryan, I can explain." "Nothing needs to be explained. I just want to know one thing, how long?" 6 months, he answered quietly. 6 months. For 6 months my best friend and wife had been playing the comedy of a happy family right in front of my nose. But then something clicked in my mind. I realized I had been thinking about this all wrong. Instead of being the victim, why not turn the tables? They had been playing games with me, maybe it was time I played some games too. Marcus, I said, putting my hand on his shoulder like I always used to. I understand. These things happen. I'm not angry. He looked up at me, confused and suspicious. You're not angry? Look, we're all adults here. Lindsay and we've been having problems for a while. Maybe this is for the best. I could see the relief washing over his face, mixed with confusion. So what do you want to do? He asked. Well, I think we should handle this like mature people. No need to make it messy for the kids. But I have one condition. What's that? I want to make sure this is what Lindsay really wants. If she chooses you over our marriage, then I'll step aside. But she needs to tell me herself. Marcus nodded eagerly. Of course, man. That's really mature of you. I went back inside where Lindsay was nervously waiting by the window. Where's Marcus? She asked. He's waiting outside. We had a good talk. She turned around and I saw fear in her eyes. What did you tell him? The truth. That I know about you too. Lindsay started to stammer, then beg, then cry. But I held up my hand. Lindsay, listen to me. I'm not going to fight this. If you want to be with Marcus, then be with Marcus. But I need you to be honest with me. Do you love him? She was silent for a long time, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. Everything is so confusing. Then let me make it simple for you. Tomorrow is Saturday. The kids are going to their grandparents for the weekend, remember? I want you to spend the day thinking about what you really want. And tomorrow evening, I want you to tell me your decision. If you choose Marcus, I'll pack my things and leave. No drama, no fighting. Clean break. Lindsay nodded, wiping her tears. And what about Marcus? I already talked to him. He understands the situation. He'll respect whatever decision you make. That night I barely slept. But not because I was heartbroken, because I was planning. I had 48 hours to prepare the most important performance of my life. Saturday morning, after we dropped the kids off, I told Lindsay I was going to spend the day at my brother's place to think things through. She said she needed time alone too. But I didn't go to my brother's. Instead, I drove to a rental car agency and rented a black sedan. Then I went to a costume shop and bought a fake mustache, glasses, and a baseball cap. Next stop was an electronics store where I purchased the smallest recording devices I could find. By evening, everything was set up. I had cameras in our bedroom, the living room, and the kitchen. All motion activated, all streaming to my phone. I also had recording devices planted in Lindsay's car and purse. When I got home around 8 p.m., Lindsay was waiting for me in the living room. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Have you made your decision? I asked. She took a deep breath. I want to try to make our marriage work. What happened with Marcus was a mistake. I love you, Ryan. I love our family. I nodded slowly. Are you sure? Because if we're going to try again, there can't be any more lies between us. I'm sure. I already called Marcus and told him it's over. Good, I said, kissing her forehead. I love you too, Lindsay. We'll get through this. But of course I knew she was lying. The recording device in her purse had picked up her conversation with Marcus earlier that day. They had agreed to be more careful, to wait a few weeks until things cooled down, then continue their relationship. They thought they were so clever. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the devoted husband trying to save his marriage. I brought Lindsay flowers, took her to dinner, suggested we go to couples counseling. Meanwhile, my hidden cameras were capturing everything. Marcus stayed away for exactly 10 days. Then, thinking I had bought their story, he started coming around again. Just checking on how you guys are doing, he would say. The cameras captured it all. Every stolen kiss when they thought I wasn't looking. Every whispered conversation. Every plan they made. But the real jackpot came on a Thursday afternoon. I was supposed to be at work, but I had called in sick and was parked down the street in my rental car watching the house. Marcus arrived around noon. This time, instead of just kissing and talking, they went upstairs. Everything was recorded in crystal clear quality. That evening, I came home as usual. Lindsay greeted me with a kiss and asked how my day went. Marcus had stayed for lunch, she said, and they had talked about him finding a new apartment. That's great, honey, I said. I'm glad you two can be friends again. The next day was Friday. I told Lindsay I had to work late. There was an emergency plumbing job at a hotel downtown. She said she understood and would probably have a quiet evening at home. Instead, I went to a printing shop and had dozens of copies made of the most damaging photographs from my surveillance. Then I went to a lawyer's office and officially filed for divorce, citing adultery and providing the evidence. But I wasn't done. I knew that both Lindsay and Marcus were creatures of habit. Every Friday night, Marcus went to Murphy's bar downtown with his co-workers. Lindsay, thinking I would be working late, had planned to meet him there at 9 o'clock. I knew this because I had listened to their entire conversation. At 8:30, I walked into Murphy's bar. Marcus was already there with 3 of his co-workers, laughing and drinking beer. I approached their table. "Hey Marcus. Fancy meeting you here." He nearly choked on his beer. "Ryan. What are you doing here?" "Oh, the job finished early. Thought I'd grab a drink before heading home. Mind if I join you?" The co-workers welcomed me warmly. Marcus had no choice but to act normal. At exactly 9 o'clock, Lindsay walked into the bar. She was wearing the black dress I had bought her for our anniversary, the one she said was too sexy to wear in public. Her face went white when she saw me sitting next to Marcus. "Lindsay," I called out loudly, standing up. "What a surprise. Come join us." She approached the table like she was walking to her execution. I was just meeting some friends." "What friends?" I asked innocently. "I don't see anyone else you know here." Marcus was sweating bullets. The co-workers were looking confused. "Actually," I continued, "this is perfect. I have something I wanted to share with both of you." I pulled out a manila envelope and started placing photographs on the table. The first few were innocent, Lindsay and Marcus talking in our kitchen, sitting on our couch. "I hired a private investigator," I lied smoothly. "I've been suspicious for a while that someone was coming to our house while I was at work. I thought maybe we had a burglar casing the joint." Marcus and Lindsay were frozen. I placed more photos on the table. These ones showed them kissing in our living room. But it turns out it wasn't a burglar at all. It was my best friend, having an affair with my wife. The co-workers' mouths dropped open. Other people in the bar started turning to look at our table. I placed the final photograph on the table, the one from Thursday afternoon, showing them going upstairs together. 6 months, I said calmly. 6 months you've been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back, making me feel like I was going crazy. Lindsay started crying. Marcus stood up quickly, knocking over his chair. "Ryan, let me explain. Explain what?" I asked, my voice getting louder. "Explain how you've been screwing my wife in my bed while I'm out working to pay for that bed? Explain how you looked me in the eye every day and pretended to be my friend." The entire bar was staring at us now. Someone had pulled out their phone and was recording. "Please," Lindsay whispered. "Can we talk about this somewhere private?" "Private?" I laughed. "You mean like how private you thought you were being?" "No, Lindsay. You wanted to play games, now we're all going to play." I stood up and addressed the bar like I was giving a speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my wife Lindsay and my best friend Marcus. They've been having an affair for 6 months, and yesterday they made love in my bed while I was at work." The bar erupted. People were laughing, gasping, taking pictures. Someone started a slow clap. Marcus grabbed my arm. "You're crazy, man. This is insane." "What's insane?" I said, shaking him off, "is that you thought you could get away with it." I turned to Lindsay. "Remember yesterday when you said you loved me and wanted to make our marriage work? The recording device in your purse captured your real conversation with Marcus. You know, the one where you agreed to keep sleeping with him after things cooled down." Her face went from white to green. "That's right," I continued. "I heard everything. Every lie, every plan, every detail of your little scheme." I picked up the photographs and put them back in the envelope. "The divorce papers will be served on Monday, Lindsay. I'm keeping the house and I'm going for full custody of the children. My lawyer says I have an excellent case." I looked at Marcus. "And you, old friend, I've already sent copies of these photos to your boss, your mother, and your ex-wife. I thought they might be interested to know what kind of man you really are." Marcus lunged at me, but the bartender stepped between us. "I think you both need to leave," he said to Marcus and Lindsay. As they stumbled toward the exit, I called out one last thing. "Oh, and Lindsay? I canceled all your credit cards this morning. Hope Marcus has enough money to pay for that dress." The bar erupted in cheers and applause as they left. But I still wasn't finished. Over the next 2 weeks, while they were dealing with the fallout from the bar scene, which had, of course, gone viral on social media, I was busy with my final preparations. I knew that Lindsay would try to take half of everything in the divorce, despite her adultery. I also knew that she had no idea about the safety deposit box I had opened 2 years ago, or the second savings account I had been putting money into for emergencies. More importantly, she had no idea that I had been recording every conversation we had since I found out about the affair. including the one where she admitted to taking money from our joint account to buy Marcus expensive gifts. I hired the best divorce attorney in Phoenix. The evidence I provided was overwhelming. Not only did I have proof of adultery, but I had proof of theft, fraud, and emotional abuse. The final twist came during the custody hearing. Lindsay's lawyer tried to argue that I was unstable, pointing to my behavior at Murphy's Bar as evidence that I might be dangerous. That's when I played my ace. "Your Honor," my lawyer said, "my client has evidence that shows he was actually the victim of a carefully planned psychological manipulation campaign." He presented recordings of Lindsay and Marcus discussing how to gaslight me, how to make me think I was paranoid and suspicious. They had been deliberately moving things in the house, changing small details, making me question my own memory. This wasn't just adultery, Your Honor. This was systematic emotional abuse designed to make my client believe he was losing his mind. The judge listened to the recordings with a grave expression. When they finished, she looked at Lindsay with obvious disgust. "I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty in my courtroom," she said. "Not only did you betray your marriage vows, but you attempted to destroy your husband's mental health in the process." The final judgment was everything I could have hoped for. I got the house, full custody of the children, and Lindsay was ordered to pay me alimony. She was also required to complete psychological counseling before she would be allowed unsupervised visits with Ethan and Chloe. Marcus lost his job due to the scandal and had to move back in with his parents. His ex-wife used the evidence of his affair to have his child support payments increased, since it proved he had been hiding money. 6 months after that night at Murphy's Bar, I was sitting in my backyard watching Ethan and Chloe play on their new swing set. The divorce was final, the house was mine, and my children were happy and healthy. Lindsay had tried to reach out several times wanting to explain her side of things, but I never responded. There was nothing left to explain. The betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but it also taught me something valuable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting angry. Sometimes it's staying calm, being smart, and letting your enemies destroy themselves. I never saw or spoke to Marcus again. I heard through mutual friends that he eventually left Arizona entirely and moved somewhere back east. As for Lindsay, she rented a small apartment across town and took a job as a waitress. She gets to see the children every other weekend under supervision. She's still single as far as I know. People sometimes ask me if I regret what I did, if I think I went too far with the public humiliation. My answer is always the same: they chose to betray me in private, but they forced me to defend myself in public. The children have adjusted well. They're in therapy to help them process the divorce, and they're doing great in school. Ethan still asks sometimes why mommy doesn't live with us anymore, and I tell him the truth, that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that can't be fixed. Chloe, being younger, adapted more quickly. She loves having her own room in the big house, and she's excited about the pool we're putting in next summer. As for me, I'm dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I've met some nice women. I'm taking it slow, being careful. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. But I'm not bitter. If anything, I'm grateful. Lindsay and Marcus did me a favor by showing me who they really were. Better to know the truth even if it hurts than to live a lie. And the truth is, I'm happier now than I've been in years. The house is peaceful, the children are thriving, and I sleep well at night knowing that justice was served. Sometimes people ask me what I would say to Lindsay if I saw her today. The answer is simple: nothing. I said everything I needed to say that night at Murphy's Bar. She made her choice, and now she's living with the consequences. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.